Hello, everyone. I'm the Lost Boy, and first off, I'd like to just address the fact that I haven't posted any videos in about a month. I was pretty sick, and some stuff got pretty busy at work, so I got lazy, I guess. I will try to do better in the future. Quite a few things have happened in the intervening time. Logan Paul came back to YouTube, did his interview with 60 Minutes, and made himself out to basically be the victim of the situation regarding the video that he put up. I did a video on it. You can click on the link below if you want to watch. So Logan Paul did his video and made himself look like poor me. So out of this whole thing, he did lose a couple endorsements. He lost his YouTube preferred status or whatever, and I think they canceled his series. So it wasn't like he came out of this unscathed. But basically, honestly, if you look at it, his viewership's grown. It really seems like he's come out of this ahead. So that's kind of gross. Also, people started eating Tide Pods. And I just have nothing to say about that. I just thought it worthy of a mention. So yeah, I guess I took time off and look what happened. I try not to take breaks in the future, so hopefully this type of thing doesn't happen again. Anyways, enough messing around. Let's get to today's topic, which is games as a service. Since the introduction of digitally purchased and downloaded games, the industry has been slowly inching its way toward what has become known as the games as a service business model. What this means is sort of self-explanatory, but I thought a more full description might be helpful. An article on Wired.com, written by Julie Muncy, explains it as follows. Games as a service refers, broadly, to a set of ideas and practices publishers are using to offer players ongoing small transactions to modify or continue their experience. These include, but are not limited to, the following: microtransactions for costumes, weapons, or power-ups, small infusions of new content to slowly increase the scope and complexity of games, loot boxes full of randomized in-game rewards, buyable in cash. Everywhere, game corporations are using these add-ons to maximize profit and keep players involved in individual games for as long as possible. So it's a new system, it's a new way of playing games. There's always good things and bad things for new systems. One advantage of games as a service might be ease of access. A lot of people actually just don't like leaving their house. They want to be able to click on something and then they have their game. They don't have to go to the store and drag their wallet out and talk to a human being, I guess. Another advantage is definitely game sharing. I'm not sure how it works on PlayStation because I'm an Xbox person, but the game sharing on Xbox allows me to share games with my girlfriend or my family on the Xbox if they also have an Xbox. So I can purchase one game and several of us can enjoy it over the network, like online together or whatever. So that's a big advantage. Another advantage of digital games is that they take up less space, like physical space in your apartment. And when you live in a big city like me, rent costs a lot, apartments are small, and you don't have a lot of room. So that can definitely be an advantage. Also, when you have games as a service, you never have to worry about not having the newest version of the game. You will have at least access to everything for that game up to the minute of right now. So as far as I can tell, those are mostly the advantages, the pros. So let's go through some cons. Some of the negatives for digital games and games as a service. You will definitely need a decent internet connection. Games are getting larger and larger, and downloading them completely from the internet is going to take up a lot of data. So those with limited bandwidth or those with limited access to the internet will have quite a few problems with digital games or games as a service. Another con can be potentially unreliable access to your library or specific titles from your game library. Now, what this means is, depending on what service you have, if you're not connected to the internet, you may not have access to a game or to the full playability of that game. Also, this doesn't happen a lot, but titles can just become discontinued depending on if they are a live game. I'm pretty sure I should look this up now. But I'm pretty sure I just heard about a game that's going to be canceled because Fortnite is successful. Okay, I'm looking it up. Paragon, free-to-play online game. Okay, so these are free-to-play games, so it doesn't have quite the same effect as if it was a game that you paid for. However, this is the example that I'm trying to make. Because of the success of Fortnite, the company who made that game has decided to cancel, meaning it is no longer able to be played because it was an online free-to-play game. So it is now gone. So this in my opinion is sort of the danger of the games as a service. One of the dangers is if you get invested in a game, you play that game, you like that game a lot, maybe you even spend some money on that game, and then all of a sudden the gaming community at large decides it doesn't really like that game, and because fewer people are playing, it suddenly ceases to exist. Another con is simply that you can't resell your games. Physical games may take up room and you may need to go to the store to buy them, but you can actually get something back for them as long as you take good care of them. So that's definitely another con, that you can't resell your games. The last negative aspect I'd like to talk about is a little bit more subtle. It's the lack of preservation or the original experience of a game. This is actually something I started to realize with film as well. It's actually very hard to see Star Wars, for example, in its original form, and this definitely goes for games. If you don't have the original copy of a game, there is a decent possibility that you're not having the original experience. Now, this may not matter to a lot of people, but it kind of matters to me, and I'm not alone. There's definitely a decent contingent of people out there who at least want access to the original experience of games they enjoyed a lot in the past. The biggest recent piece of news for games as a service has to be Microsoft announcing Game Pass for Xbox, as well as Nintendo's announcement of its online service, which is supposed to get here around September of 2018. This is quite a big push by Microsoft for the games as a service business model. It's actually upset some retailers quite a bit. At first, I thought it wasn't such a big deal because I thought it was just first-party Microsoft published games. However, I took a look at the site and there's quite a bit of stuff on there. We'll have to see what effect this has in the months going forward. This is definitely a broad topic and a large new area, so there's some specific things I'd like to go over, such as the difference between purchased titles and free-to-play titles. For me, games as a service makes sense for free-to-play titles, which is mostly the reason I can't enjoy most free-to-play games that I've tried. The whole experience seems geared around microtransactions. Microtransactions don't mesh very well with games like Halo 5 or Shadows of War, which don't really have an organic or natural feeling way to integrate them. Really, the only way to do it without unbalancing these types of games is to make player customizations or add-ons only cosmetic, meaning they have no effect on gameplay. This is how most developers and publishers started implementing microtransactions and such. However, recently the trend has been towards what many gamers feel could better be described as a pay-to-win mechanic. So again, this is a little bit of a subtle discussion. Personally, for me, with reference to this discussion, games break down into two categories. Game types which can potentially work within the framework of games as a service, and game types which are totally not suited to it. So, for example, a fighting game or a first-person shooter does not make any sense in the games as a service business model. The reason for that is with regard to these particular types of games, the competitiveness of the game is what makes it engaging. When you add games as a service or microtransactions to these models of games, you necessarily unbalance them, which makes the competition of the game less fun for players. Games more so that work with the microtransaction model are games such as SimCity or real-time strategy games, for example. The issue is, many games don't naturally lend themselves to the games as a service model. When that model is thrust upon them, it inevitably has a negative impact on the experience of gaming. The games start to feel like a money-wringing machine instead of an immersive environment to explore. A recent report from Digital River has stated that microtransactions and the games as a service model has tripled the value of the games industry. And that isn't just for mobile or free-to-play games. The Digital River study also stated in 2016, a quarter of all digital revenue from PC games with an upfront cost came from additional content. That's huge. 25%. The study goes on to say, publishers seek to meet those expectations and have adopted a games as a service model, releasing fewer titles over time while keeping players engaged longer with regular updates and add-ons. So, fewer titles, which will mostly be refuculated and shoehorned or even fully designed with a constant mind towards continued monetization. Sweet. One seemingly positive effect is when games release new content via updates for free, like Halo 5 and GTA Online. So, in cases like that, one needs to weigh the free content against how hard grinding resources is versus just paying for them with real money. Personally, I would far rather pay once for a chunk of new content instead of paying over and over for resources or loot boxes and getting the content for free. From my perspective, when you pay a bit at a time like that instead of just paying once for a piece of content, you are hugely encouraging whoever's setting the prices to conspire with whoever is assigning the drop rates for gear or other in-game resources. This is precisely how you wind up with games where progression seems nearly impossible to do by organic in-game grinding and without reaching for your wallet again and again. It's a balancing act to be sure, but it's also a very slippery slope. My biggest concern is the subtle nature of how changes like this take place. It's one little step at a time, which, over time, becomes many steps amounting to a tectonic shift. Meanwhile, many consumers hardly even notice, like a frog in a pot of water that can't feel it as the temperature slowly rises to boiling. Certainly, kids new to the gaming scene now will simply take all of these new systems as just being the way things are, as being the norm. I wouldn't even feel so bad about it all if I didn't feel like the average games consumer is the metaphorical equivalent of the kid having his lunch money stolen by the school bully. The difference is that instead of literally physically twisting your arm behind your back, in this case, consumers are being outsmarted by an industry worth billions, with apparently every incentive to bleed us all dry. And if gamers ever get fed up about it and complain, we're told we're simply being given an opportunity to get a sense of pride and accomplishment. How's that for telling me how delicious my shit sandwich will taste? Although there are many negatives, most analysts predict that the trend towards non-physical media and games as a service will continue to gain traction, and those of us with any kind of doubts or concerns will simply have to adjust. At a certain point, a person might decide to simply withdraw from gaming, at least in terms of the constant cash sink business model gamers are now being trained on. Actually, this has already begun to happen to me. Any hint of pay-to-win mechanics instantly turns me off on the idea of a game purchase. Older games or indie games are suddenly starting to seem a lot more appealing. Certainly, I'm only one person and my spending habits don't affect the overall market whatsoever, but I doubt I'm the only one to hit that threshold. So, while progress is indeed inevitable, I hope that enough gamers get fed up with over-the-top greed and constantly being overcharged, that moving into the future, the inevitable changes in the landscape of gaming will actually benefit the gaming consumers as well as the giant companies that provide us all with our games. Thanks for watching this video. Always remember your happy thought, and I'll see you next time.